Walker's Way is pleased to announce that Dr. John McDougall, a physician and nutrition expert who teaches health and well-being through plant-based living, is here with us today to share his expertise on preventing and healing degenerative diseases through diet and the importance of plant-based nutrition for our little ones. Mr. McDougall has been studying, writing, and speaking on the effects of nutrition for over 30 years, and he's the founder and director of the nationally renowned McDougall Program, which is a 10-day residential program in Santa Rosa, California, where he guides and directs people on diet and lifestyle changes. His program not only promotes a broad range of dramatic and lasting health benefits, but importantly, can also reverse serious illness without the use of drugs. So, Dr. McDougall, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I've been following you for years. I've read your books. I listened to your lectures. I don't think there's a better person to share their knowledge on plant-based nutrition for Walker's Way followers. And what I consider even more important is the fact that you share my passion for starting children off on the right path from the start, how important plant-based whole foods are for them. So I can't wait to get to the questions, and I'm so thankful that you're here with us today. So I'm just going to get right to the questions, if that's okay.
I think I assume from what you've said so far that most of our talk is young parents, particularly women.
Right.
And, there are many, many reasons a woman in her childbearing and child rearing ages should think serious about nutrition. After all, you're laying down the foundation of health for your children from the beginning because it's much harder to change them later on. Second of all, there's just so many sicknesses that your children get from the food they eat, particularly the cow's milk. Your kids are sick with snotty nose, ear infection, asthma problems, rashes. You even have some overweight kids. They say that 17% of the children are obese and another 17% are overweight. So you end up with a fat kid, and I suppose you get used to having a fat kid around. You just say, well, he's just fat. You got bad luck. Well, that's not bad luck. It's because of the foods you fed them. Your kids are constipated. You don't know that. I know you don't know it. You think it's normal for everybody to go and sit in the bathroom for 15 to 30 minutes and grunt and groan and strain and bleed. But it's not. That's not the way it's supposed to be. With my kids and grandkids growing up, they noticed it themselves. They would say, Johnny or Julie, they have to sit in the bathroom for so long, and they make these funny noises, all these noises. And we don't understand, but they sound like they're having a terrible time, because for my children and grandchildren, it's in the bathroom. 45 seconds later, it's out on the playground. They have no idea what's really going on with those kids. But it's happening with your kids. They're not supposed to be constipated. They're not supposed to be fat. They're not supposed to be greasy with oily skin and acne. The way I'd approach kids, though, you've got really young ones. Really young ones, they have no choice. I mean, after all, they all should be breastfed. You know that. We don't have to get into that discussion, but sometimes that's not an option. And once you get past breastfeeding, then you get into food choices. Who's in charge in your house? Who's in charge? Well, you're supposed to be. And if you just let the children naturally be inclined to what they like to eat, I bet you would notice if you gave them a chance. Many didn't even give them a chance. You just stuck chicken and cows and pigs in their mouth. But if you gave them a chance, you'd have found out that they like simple things, plain things like plain pasta, plain bread, plain potatoes, plain beans. I remember my wife, Mary, when she would make spaghetti sauce, because the vegetables in the marinara sauce scared the kids. She would grind up the vegetables before she put them in their marinara sauce. They loved it. But it's just that they like simple things and starches. They love starch until you pervert their taste. And then, of course, you get to eat the meat and the dairy by covering it with sugar, because we naturally are sugar lovers. And get off to a bad start. And now you've just ruined your kids unintentionally, because they're the most important thing in your life. You've ruined your kids. You don't know it. I mean, they're alive, and they can still make it to soccer practice, but they're not at their best. Remember, the best athletes, the strongest people in the world eat a starch-based, actually pure vegan diet, but we don't have to get in that. All your marathon and triathlon winners, they all eat a diet of 80% starch, corn, rice, potatoes. You want your kids to win out on the soccer field or the track, and you better feed them right. Okay, so you ruined your kids unintentionally. Now you've got this wonderful spouse, wife, husband, and I know they're fat. I mean, I go to the store. I went to the grocery store yesterday with Mary, and we're walking down this aisle, and there's all these young women. Well, of course, I notice women. I hate to tell you that bias, but I still do at 70 years old. But I notice all these young women, and they're all 20, 30, 50 pounds overweight, and they're carrying this mass around their skeleton, and they're beautiful bodies, by the way. I mean, pretty much everybody looks great. But most people in our society destroy it by putting on an extra 30, 40, 50 pounds. And I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for them because I know they want to be as attractive as possible to friends and family. And they do all kinds of special things like spending thousands of dollars on clothes and wanting to buy fancy cars so they look better. They're more attractive. Well, excuse me. The biggest attraction in the world to your personal appearance and yourself is all that body fat hanging around you, and that is covered with grease all over your skin. You've got gray-colored skin instead of pink, and if your spouse, and probably does, know about your bowel habits, you're horribly constipated with hemorrhoids, and my goodness, how could you further destroy such a wonderful creation as yourself? Because you don't know any better. You believe eating meat and dairy is good for you. You think potatoes are bad. You think rice is bad. You don't stand a chance. And then we'll get to your male spouses. I see them. I see the pediculum. I saw one yesterday when I was at the grocery store. This body fat on this guy, man, it must have been 50 pounds hanging right over his belt. And he was only in his 40s, and I could just see him. Heart attack, prostate cancer. This is unfair to you and your family. And if you want to get it fixed, it's so simple. All you do is switch to the traditional diet of people. There is a diet for people, just like there's a diet for your cat, and a diet for your parent, and a best diet for your dog. And I bet you spend lots of money making sure you get the right dog food. You don't ask the dog what they want to eat. You feed them what's best for them. There's a right food for every animal. And you must be asking yourself, please, after we get done with this interview, which at the most opens your eyes, if it didn't send you in totally the other direction. But get done with this interview, just stop and say, okay, I didn't like this McDougall guy. Too aggressive, too sure of himself, or whatever. I didn't really like him. I'm not going to list him. I like my pork chops, and that's it. All right, fine. Then ask yourself, why is your family sick and fat? Ask yourself, what is the ideal food to feed my family? Just like I investigated the best food to feed my dog and my cat, my parrot, and my snake. I don't feed my snake bananas. I don't feed.
But I actually want to, can I chime in there? Because I think a lot of people will blame their genes. So can you actually tackle that a little bit? Because
Sure.
some
Yeah,
people,
let me tackle that in a big way. If you remember this will totally get this nonsense out of your mind. There was a time, and some of you are old enough to remember it. I mean, if you're older than 50, you can. There was a time when obesity, heart disease, breast cancer, colon cancer, multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis virtually did not exist amongst billions of people in the world. Okay, let me take you further back than that. The traditional diet of people has been starch-based. You remember from your history lessons the Aztecs and the Mayans. Central America?
Yep.
The people of the corn.
Yep.
It was in corn.
And sweet potatoes.
They've been to Peru. Their diet was potatoes. 90% of their diet was potatoes. In Peru, that goes back thousands of years. You go to the Far East and you think immediately of rice. Do you know that in 1980, 90% of the food in China came from rice? In 1980. And in 1980, there was no obesity, or really none. There were fewer than 1% of cases of diabetes in 1980. Now the Chinese, they're past 12% diabetic, frank diabetic. and over half are pre-diabetic. In 35 years, and what changed? They don't eat 90% of their diet as rice anymore. They
No.
go to the same place you do. Kentucky Fried Chicken, In-N-Out Burger, bacon and eggs for breakfast. Yeah, they are American in every way, including some of the most massive obesity in the world. You know, we go to population after populations of billions of people who've lived on starch-based diets, and none of them. I mean, think back to the Vietnam conflict. I'm old enough. I was involved peripherally in that. You know, you can see pictures in town squares of hundreds of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of different genes. No fat people.
Right. Could you specify starch? Because I think people don't know what a good healthy starch is. I know sweet potato is a healthy starch, Yukon potato is healthy starch, but I think people hear starch and they're afraid of starches. We live in a society that's afraid of starches and wants animal protein. So can you list your top 5 favorite starch foods, just so people know exactly what
Well,
that is?
rice, corn, and potatoes have provided most of the calories for most of the people who've lived on this earth.
Yeah.
So rice, corn, and potatoes, just pick that. Any one of them, any combination of them, there are all kinds of good starches. I don't know of any bad starches. Of course, if you add lard to them or refine them terribly, you'll
Right.
run into that problem.
So you're talking about
Uh,
complex, healthy starches,
no,
sweet
no,
potato.
you know why people believe starches are terrible and meat and dairy is good? It's called the meat and the dairy industry.
I
They've been
know.
full at it for probably 100 years, but certainly since 1977, they've been full time trying to convince the American consumer that it is good to live on animals. And as a side message, they taught you that starches are fatty, even though if you're old enough, you remember when there were 2 billion Asians in Asia and not a single fat person.
Or heart disease, or cancer, or
Or
all those other heart,
breast cancer, or
diabetes.
prostate cancer, or hemorrhoids, ladies,
It's
hemorrhoids.
it's an epidemic, and
You
it's
know,
because of how we're feeding everybody.
these are dietary diseases. 90% of the illnesses you and your friends and family suffer from are caused by eating like a king and a queen.
Right.
These dietary diseases, you eat like a king and a queen, you look like a king and a queen. And you're looking at your husband or your wife right now and go, hey, Queenie, hey, you look pretty good. You could start for king and king. You could be Santa Claus next year. How about that? You know, this is really good. You could be Santa Claus.
Let me ask you, I know you had a stroke at age 18, and I
Yeah.
think that's what initiated your plant-based path. How did
That,
you,
that,
how
gave,
did,
that gave me the right to talk to people about bad health. I had terrible health before I was 28. I had a stroke, major abdominal surgery. I was 80 pounds heavier, 70 pounds heavier than I am now. I was a very sick kid. But and that just gave me the right to talk to you. What caused me to practice this way is I was a sugar plantation doctor between 1973 and 1976. I worked on a sugar plantation. I took care of first, second, third, and fourth generation Filipinos, Japanese, Chinese, and Koreans. My first generation patients who lived on rice and vegetables, no dairy, very little fish or meat, had no diabetes, no heart disease, no obesity, worked into their 90s. Second generation got a little fatter and sicker as they became more westernized. And third generation are among the fattest and sickest people in the world, those who live in Hawaii. Yes, they are. The Filipinos have the greatest incidence of prostate cancer, and the Chinese have the greatest incidence of living in Hawaii. I mean, it's just terrible. It's a massive epidemic in Hawaii, but it is every place. I mean, I don't have to send you to Hawaii. Just look next door. You know, we're we're talking about a world of sickness
right.
fixed by cutting your food bill by 40%. And if you care about animals, taking care of that consciousness problem you have of killing animals to eat.
Right.
I mean, that bothers a lot of people. Even when I was a kid, eating pounds of meat, I mean, I really didn't like touching that piece of cow muscle. And I hated it. I hated it when we were at Sunday roast beef dinner and that big blood vessel popped up out of the meat. My goodness, that's in that meat, that blood vessel. You expect me to eat that?
Well, it's funny because a lot of people look at vegan plant-based foods and say, "Oh, that's gross, that's disgusting," while they're eating a steak which is bloody and filled with arteries and veins and not arteries, but
That has to be all defensive thinking. I couldn't get, I bet, I mean, I know, I couldn't get a person to eat a raw piece of chicken.
oh no.
They have to cook it, salt it, and cover it up with barbecue sauce to get it down. It's just the barbecue sauce you like. I mean, they could throw the chicken out and put a cracker underneath. You can't stand that. You're not a cat. My cat loves chicken. You can't eat saltless butter and saltless cheese. The only way you get these dairy downs for them to add tons of salt and sugar to it. You can't eat it. You can't drink olive oil. I give you a whole glass of olive oil. You wouldn't drink it. You've got, you gotta hide it in a salad or mix it up in a cake. Otherwise, the oil is so disgusting. All your senses, your stomach size, your mind, nothing has failed you, except you've been educated like everybody has for the money. It's just the money.
Right.
Don't take it personal when your child gets leukemia or your little girl develops breasts when she's 7 years old and starts menstruating at 8. Don't get upset with your kid. It's the meat and dairy industry that forced all this sickness on your family.
Sure.
And you're going to get over it. I'm going to take you 5 minutes to learn the truth.
There's nothing that fires me up more than the dairy industry, so don't get me started on that. You keep talking about the obese and the fat, but there are such thing as thin people that are dying inside, that get heart disease, that
Yeah.
develop the cancer. So can you touch, people think they're thin,
Oh,
okay, I'm healthy.
there are some thin people. Yeah, that's about 20% of the population, by the way.
I know.
So they're disappearing rapidly. The thin people are rapidly vanishing from planet Earth. Um, yeah, some people are thin because they just naturally eat less, or run that genetic predisposition, or diet all the time, or they're on these deadly high protein diets.
Right.
Deadly. The ones that make you constipated, the meat,
Carcinogenic.
the Atkins, the grain brain, the wheat belly, all those ketogenic make yourself sick so you won't eat, so you stay thin diets. Yeah, there are some people who are thin, but not many left.
So here's the thing though, some people look at their kids, oh, my kid is thin, so I can give him the chicken nuggets and the Pop-Tarts because they're thin, they're healthy. But the heart disease starts at infancy. It starts at age 2, 3, 4, 5. So how do we convince those parents that, hey, your kid's thin, but the problems are starting now. You need to change their diet now. Is there any?
Follow them to the bathroom.
They'll probably give a fiber one bar,
Uh,
right?
yeah,
Tell them the
right.
problem ingredients.
You can do a lot of things and make a lot of excuses for what you do. I mean, that's human nature. Talk to an alcoholic or a cigarette smoker, and they'll give you 16 reasons why it's okay for them to do what they do. It's the same thing with people who live on the American diet.
Right.
What they start out by saying is, well, look at what this expert says. Look at that expert says. You see, nobody really knows. They're all confused. So I'll do what I damn please. And you do. You do what you please because that's human nature. You listen to people who have good news about your bad habits. That's what you do.
Right.
Oh yeah, I want to listen to that guy. I like that guy over there, even though he's like 80 pounds overweight and can hardly get up the stairs. This is human nature. But try and get over it. Some of you will. Some of you really care about all you care about your families.
Right. I think they're all trying to feed their kids the best way they think possible, but there's all these doctors that are against the plant-based diet. You need milk and dairy. So why is there such a disconnect?
If I lined those doctors up against a wall, 80% of them would be fat and 40% would be obese. And they're dying of heart disease. They're filling the operating rooms for bypass surgery. The doctors are themselves. So don't tell me about doctors.
Why is there a disconnect between doctors and nutrition and plant-based nutrition? I mean, I myself have met several doctors who kind of give me a dirty look when they hear that Walker is plant-based whole foods.
They just, people get defensive. What do you expect? It's just human nature.
Is it lack of education?
I assure you, your doctor knows nothing about nutrition. And if he or she does, Then they have come across the things that you and I are talking about. They may have discounted them for whatever reason. They may work for the dairy or meat industry, which many of them do, some of the prominent ones. They just might like their double cheeseburger and want to defend it to their death.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of reasons. Lots of people say lots of things, but you can't discount the fact that all large populations of people throughout all of verifiable human history have obtained the bulk of their calories from starch.
Simple,
Rice,
real
corn,
food.
potatoes,
Right.
well,
That's Walker's
but,
Way motto: simple, real food, simple ingredients.
yeah, but it has to be starch. You see, this is where people get confused with the whole food plant-based movement. Is they think, oh, I'm going to become a vegan, and they try and live off kale and broccoli and cauliflower, and they're just plain and simple starved to death. And they go, nobody can do this. Well, nobody can do this. It must be starch-based.
Right.
If your diet is predominantly beans and rice and corn and potatoes and sweet potatoes and breads and pastas, you love it. Fully satisfying. We even have separate taste buds for starch on our tongue. Uh, telling people to stop eating animals and dairy, meat and dairy is not sufficient. We must tell them that the bulk of their calories, they need to look at their plate and they need to say, well, about 90% of that's rice.
Yeah.
But 90% of that food is sweet potatoes.
What kind of rice do you recommend? Brown, black, white, jasmine?
I don't really care. White rice is less healthy, but not much.
Right.
Yeah.
What is your favorite meal?
Mary and I, we have at least 3, 4 times a week. I'd have to say at least four. Give you at least. At least 4 times a week, Mary makes a kind of a soup or a stew out of beans. She has a whole pantry shelf full of different kinds of beans. And she cooks them in a crock pot or slow cooker, which she's had for 35 years. And so those go on in the morning. It takes her about 5 minutes to put beans and spices and water in. And that cooks all day in the crock pot. And then at night before we eat, she either takes a bag of we're getting convenient. She takes a bag of microwavable brown rice and cooks it, or she takes the new potatoes, the little potatoes, like that big, and cuts them into quarters and boils them for about half an hour. And that's what we have is we have potatoes and this bean soup, stew type mixture. She'll throw a little kale, a little broccoli, a little something in it. But it's mostly beans and potatoes and rice
Which is
and
filling.
that's our favorite dinner. But our favorite breakfast, and I just had it, is oatmeal.
Yeah.
I have oatmeal and blueberries every morning.
Which
It's
is
just natural habit.
It's filling and satiating. People always ask you, "Aren't you always hungry? Aren't you always hungry?" I'm like, "No, I'm actually always," and I also eat throughout the day as well. Um,
So,
uh,
you must learn your appetite is not satisfied by protein or fat. Well,
right,
this is a little bit about protein, so that's not correct. But it's not satisfied by fat. It doesn't notice fat. And what it's primarily satisfied by is
right.
sugar, which is starch like potatoes, rice, corn.
hmm
Anyway,
Now,
uh,
just to clarify, I mean, I have read enough to believe that I believe heart disease and cancer and diabetes are caused by diet. Can you just make it clear? Do you believe those problems would decrease significantly if we all went to a starch-based, plant-based, whole foods diet?
coronary artery disease, type 2 diabetes, obesity, rheumatoid arthritis, multiple sclerosis, I don't know where else you want to go, cannot exist.
Alzheimer's, I've read too, even.
Well, Alzheimer's is a little different story. Alzheimer's is due to aluminum poisoning. But these diseases do not exist in populations that use starch-based diet,
Right,
except among the kings and queens. Huh.
right.
You
And
know,
and do these problems
so
start
to
in
answer your
childhood?
question, do I think that a healthy diet would prevent these? I know they prevent 100%. Not think.
Right.
I have absolutely no doubt that these diseases would not exist in our society. Now, the question of reversibility, type 2 diabetes is 100% reversible. Rheumatoid arthritis is pretty close to that. There's a lot of damage left over. It's pretty easy to treat. Constipation, of course, is very easy to treat. Reversing coronary artery disease, many of my colleagues have shown it happens in a very high percentage of people,
Right.
as high as 90%. or even higher. But so yeah, it's reversible. Constipation solved usually in 24 to 48 hours. Indigestion goes, oh yeah, these are easy to fix and cost nothing, and you don't have to see a doctor. And yeah, you stop taking these expensive, dangerous pills, and you have a better chance of spending time with your kids and grandkids and pets and spouse and whatever. I mean,
Have more
at
energy.
least look into this opportunity. At least when you get done with this interview, think, when I was a kid, I do remember that people lived on diets of rice and potatoes.
Not Pop Tarts and Fruity
And
Pebbles.
regardless, but even back 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, the pharaohs and priests and priestesses of what's now Egypt, they suffered from half of them. You could see artery disease in half of the mummies that you could find arteries. You could see artery disease 4,000 years ago. They had birth defects related to what we eat. 4,000 years ago, obesity. So no, it's not processed food only. Processed food just adds an additional important insult. The problem is rich food. Rich food. Rich food is meat and dairy and cupcakes. The processed things you're talking about are definitely in that category. But I'd like listeners to think more broadly about this and not think, well, if I just give up my refined ice cream sandwiches at night and instead switch to, uh, then I'll solve my problems. Or I'll switch from, anyway, you're not going to do it just by getting the junk out of the house. You must replace the bulk of your calories with a whole starch, and then add some fruits and vegetables. And then if you want to have a little junk on your birthday or Christmas or Easter, fine. But those are the days you eat like a king and a queen, not every day, 4 times a day.
Right.
That's why you're fat and sick. That's how easy it is to get well. It always works.
And just to clarify, this stuff starts in childhood, correct? Even though they may appear healthy and well and running around the playground, they have problems that could be starting that will show up at age 20 or 25, like yourself. I mean,
I told you I used to. I take care of kids. I was a general practitioner for 3 years. The kids are sick.
yeah,
If you're a doctor or a nurse or somebody who has personal contact and asks personal questions about the kids, they're sick. They got stomach aches. They have earaches every month or two. They're in the
headaches.
doctor. They're as I say, bowel problems are the most obvious for kids. I mean, just the constipation that the kids get from eating the dairy and the meat.
Right,
That should be enough to outlaw
right.
these foods from our public schools.
And we all believe acne is normal for when you go through puberty, but I've read that there's countries where they don't eat these foods and they don't get acne and all these issues.
Acne is a disease of the Western diet,
Right, that's what I think.
no question about it. And we have lots of people who, as far as I know, pretty much everybody. There are a couple patients I ran into who had acne problems that won't resolve with the diet. But we had to investigate further. They had polycystic ovary disease and hormone problems. But yeah, it's a dietary disease.
Right. I need to wrap it up because we're getting on 30 minutes
Uh,
and we have busy moms listening. Quick question. The biggest issue moms face is transitioning their kids to these healthy foods. You serve them healthy food and then they're like, I want the old food. Or they just want fruit. Kids love
it
fruit.
depends on age. Like I say, when they're below 6 years old, who's in charge? Okay, if you're not in charge when your kids are 6 years old, I know what the rest of your life is going to be like.
Hmm.
It ain't fun. So if you're in charge, once they get to be 6, 7, 8, 10 years old, they're going to friends and so on, and they're asking more questions. Then you need to educate them. What Mary and I did is we kept only clean foods in the house, and that's all that was available. Anytime, any place, that was all that was available. When they went out to birthday parties or friends' house, they got to do whatever they wanted. That was our choice. And raising them that way, I now have a child who's 42, the youngest is 33. They all eat like I do, and Mary does.
Right.
But because we didn't put this forbidden pleasure on them, you can't do this. Well, I'm going to do it. We just said, look, this is why. and this is what we serve, and that's it. And so anyway, when they get older, and then when they get to be in the teen years, I saw a lecture given at my grandkids' school, which is a very, very good school in our area. This young man, he was in eighth grade, so does that make you 13, 14 years old? He gave a lecture on, he was a farmer and raised in 4-H, raised cows and so on. He gave a lecture on the moral issues of being a farmer and a cow raiser. And he actually asked during the lecture, how many of you were vegan in the audience? And of course, Mary and I and Heather and a couple other people raised their hand. But, so even in the teenage years, kids start to realize the impact of their food on animals, on killing animals. They start to realize if they get the proper education that we have a planet that's almost gone. Whether it can be saved or not is a big question. But changing the food is crucial to saving the planet. They start to realize that. They start to realize that the best athletes in the world eat this way. The best winners eat this way. And, pretty soon they kind of figure it out themselves. And regardless, the things that you lay down in foundation as kids and teenagers, you'll be amazed at what happens to them when they get to be in their 20s and 30s. That foundation education comes back. They rebel. My kids rebelled. They rebel, but they come back to what you basically taught them as far as religion, as far as values, as far as eating habits, smoking habits, drinking habits, etc. So put the work into it. You may, just like everything else, you may think that you're talking to a stone wall, but you're not.
That's all
And eventually it pays off.
My poor family, it's all I talk about. I'm always talking about nutrition and food.
And if that's all that's in the house and you put the effort to make it taste good, don't just serve boiled potatoes. I mean, make a potato salad, a great tasting potato salad. Or, don't just serve spaghetti noodles. Say serve a great marinara sauce, pasta noodles, and don't just just make delicious things. Think about your favorite bean soup or pea soup that you make right now. Right now, just leave the oil and animals out. Put a little salt, a little sugar, a little spice, a little flavor in it. Just leave the animals and oil out, and they won't even notice the difference after the third bite. The oil is tasteless and disgusting. The animals are disgusting and tasteless.
I agree. We're at 32 minutes, and people are busy, and I know you're busy. Thank you so much. I love your insight. Most people don't talk about the starches, so I'm glad you focus so much on starches because people are
crucial. Until you learn this, you're dead in the water. You have no chance until you learn about starch. Would you give my website and also tell them that everything there is free?
Oh, you're in a blog with all the links to your website and all your everything. So I follow you regularly. I get your email.
DrMcDougall.com, and you'll be amazed at the free information there. There's basically everything you need is free and then some.
Thank you so much.
Include an article on children and pregnancy.
I'm attaching that to it, actually, the blog.
Oh, you're really good. Yeah. Well, you got off to a good start.
Right. I'm helping them the best I can. I'm trying to give them the
and I know they care, and they're going to change. Most of them are in time. And this is just one hit that we've had on their consciousness. So they're going to change. You'll be amazed at what you and I did over this last 33 minutes. It just takes time, and anything you can do to make it easier for them, like this or other experiences, is well worthwhile. And our website's full of those videos and written things and all kinds of stuff.
All very motivational. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I hope we made an impact today. That was the goal.
I know we did. We changed all kinds of people.
Right.
There'll be a little grumbling, but
even if we changed one person, it's worth it if you ask me. So that's my goal.
Look, you end up with your husband having a bypass surgery, your wife losing a breast, and you say that was simply because of the food I chose.
Right.
It really wasn't worth it. But it's hard for us as people to make those kind of judgments. We always think that we're invincible. But there's another problem more important than our health. But anyway.
Thank you.
You take care of everything.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
It was a pleasure. Good to talk to you. Goodbye, folks.